Hi, I'm Kevin Mottley with the Mottley Law Firm. I'm doing a series on issues that commonly come up in mild traumatic brain injury cases. One of those issues I'd like to talk about today is the following. The person who's been involved in an accident goes to the emergency room and they are complaining about soreness in their body, maybe in their back, maybe in their neck. They may even have a headache, but the emergency room physicians or nurses do not make any remarks in the medical records about there being a concussion or a brain injury or anything like that. In fact, they say there's no evidence that they lost consciousness in the accident. And so the person leaves the emergency room, and then in the days and weeks following that visit, they start to have problems, or at least they start focusing on the fact that they are having problems with things like memory and headaches and concentration and just their fatigue level, things like that. And only then, at some later date, does a doctor finally say, hey, this person has a concussion from the accident. So what happens in that situation, which is a very common situation? In fact, it probably happens in 90% of the brain injury cases I've been involved in. What happens is that the defense lawyers and the defense experts in these cases will use that failure to diagnose a brain injury in the emergency room against the plaintiff. They'll argue that, well, there probably wasn't a brain injury because the emergency room physician didn't say that there was or didn't note that there was. But I'm here to tell you that that is, although a very common scenario, it is by no means fatal to a brain injury case. It does not mean the case has no value or does not have merit. Quite to the contrary, there is medical literature available that establishes that traumatic brain injuries in the mild category are at least 50% of the time not diagnosed in an emergency room. So why is that? Why might that be? Well, if you think about it, by the time a person gets to an emergency room with complaints of pain and soreness and things like that, the emergency room physicians and nurses are really focused on issues that are, well, an emergency, like a broken bone or something bleeding inside the person's body. They're really looking for issues like that, and that's where their focus really is. They may ask the person, hey, did you lose consciousness in the accident? Well, a person who's lost consciousness and has a gap in their memory, they really can't remember that. So they're not very good historians of whether they lost consciousness or not. And of course, there seldom is a witness around who can say, well, I was there and I saw them. Yes, they did lose consciousness. So there's just a kind of a lack of information available in the emergency room, together with the fact that the personnel there are focusing on other issues. And that frequently results in there being no mention of a concussion or a mild traumatic brain injury in the emergency room. But again, that does not mean that the person didn't have a mild traumatic brain injury, and it does not mean that the person has no case for injuries relating to the brain. We have settled many, many cases, tried cases, where that very fact scenario was involved. So I hope this has been helpful, and look for other videos that I'll post that address some of the common issues that we deal with in our mild traumatic brain injury practice. Again, Kevin Mottley with the Mottley Law Firm. If you want to reach out to us, call the number on this website or our website, or fill out one of the contact forms and somebody will get in contact with you. Thanks again.